That night, I stayed up printing every notice they'd ever sent me. 86 pages total. The printer hummed, toner sharp in the air. I numbered each page, slipped them into binders, and labeled the spine in red. Evidence log, Harlan versus Valley HOA. The next morning, Rhonda was back. This time with 2 officers wearing blue HOA Compliance Division uniforms. Badges like toys, but radios real enough. She handed me another notice. "You've exceeded your non-compliance threshold," she said. "Eviction set for Friday, 9 a.m. I looked at the date again. "Friday's a holiday," I said. "County office is closed." She smiled. "We're private. We don't close." Her confidence told me she'd never been challenged properly. I tucked the notice under my arm, stepped back across the bridge, and said the words that marked the beginning of my quiet war. "Then I guess I'll see you in court, or wherever your paperwork falls apart first." The next 48 hours were a blur of phone calls, scans, and late-night coffee. Clara looped in an investigator named Vince Doyle, a former title clerk with a wheezy laugh and a habit of chewing on pen caps. He found that the HOA's Phase 4 annexation map omitted a thin strip along the river, 40 feet wide, 200 long, listed as a maintenance easement. "Guess who holds that easement?" he said. "Who?" "You. Bought with the cabin in '02. Means they can't cross that stream without your permission." I stared at the map, heartbeat steady, brain shifting into gear. That easement was more than dirt. It was control. And control is leverage. By dawn, I knew what to do. But first, I needed to let them overplay their hand. So I didn't file the challenge right away. I let Rhonda's board believe I was cornered. The next board notice came 2 days later. A special assessment intent for $9,800 to recover enforcement expenditures. They stapled it to my gate with a pink slip pin. I laughed out loud. The second engagement moment came naturally. If you're watching this and you've ever been bullied by an HOA, tell me below. Are you firmly anti-HOA, or do you think some of them can be fixed? If you've beaten one before, share how you did it. Help someone else stand up. And if you're one of those HOA lurkers reading comments, well, leave your best defense down there. Let's see how it holds up. Clara and Vince both warned me that this was their pressure phase. They'd flood me with noise until I slipped up. And they did. 6 calls in one morning. Compliance officer, treasurer, then some security subcontractor saying he'd need to inspect my propane tanks. By week's end, the harassment montage had begun. A citation for leaving trash cans visible beyond sunset. Timestamp 7:03 p.m. A wellness check filed anonymously. Resident showing agitation. A letter claiming my mailbox was too rural. A Facebook post in the HOA group calling me dangerous to community stability. I documented everything. Photos, call logs, certified mail receipts. When they realized I wasn't folding, they escalated. Rhonda scheduled an emergency board meeting for the next Wednesday. Subject, Harlan parcel resolution. I attended via Zoom, camera on, mic muted. She didn't notice. The HOA's lawyer, a smug young guy in a slate suit, read from a pre-written motion. Given repeated non-compliance and unpaid assessments totaling $11,350, the board authorizes enforcement under Section 22DC. That section, Clara whispered in my ear through Bluetooth, only applies to properties under recorded CCRs. You're not. I hit record. One-party consent is legal in Colorado and captured every word. Knowledge nugget number 2. In one-party consent states, recording a conversation is lawful if you're a participant. But recordings must be factual, not edited, to be admissible in administrative hearings. Rhonda's voice cracked as she said, "If he doesn't vacate by Friday, we'll authorize tow and lockout." She thought lockout sounded official, but even the HOA's bylaws forbid trespass. Clara grinned through the phone. They just hung themselves. That night, Vince and I drove down to the county records office after hours. He had an old access badge from when he worked there, still scanned green. Inside, the air smelled like toner and cardboard. He slid open a drawer labeled Valley Annex Phase 4. The folders were too new, no dust. He pulled one. Inside, the supposed county approval sheet bore a digital seal. "Rhonda forged this," he said quietly. She printed it on template paper. I took a picture with timestamp. 11:42 p.m., September 19th, Evidence piece number 87. We were careful not to remove anything, just documented it all. Then I found something better. The plat map's legend had a microprint line, subject to existing easements of record. My easement. It was their Achilles heel, printed right there in size 8 font. Back at the cabin, the stream hissed under the bridge like static. I sat on the porch, laptop open, drafting my response. Not to them, to the county. I filed a formal notice of easement enforcement, referencing Deed Book 542, page 117. I gave it the blandest title possible, Temporary Access Restriction for Maintenance Safety. That filing, innocuous to anyone else, legally barred non-authorized vehicles from crossing the bridge, including HOA agents, until inspection clearance. Reversal number 1 was quietly in motion, though I didn't call it that yet. It just felt like breathing after being strangled. 2 mornings later, HOA trucks rolled up again. 4 officers stepped out, plus Rhonda in her scarf, holding a clipboard thicker than her arm. I met them mid-bridge. "You're trespassing on a restricted easement," I said. "We have authorization," she said. "From a forged annexation," I replied, and handed her the printed deed copy with my name on the easement line. "County verified. You might want to read the small print next time." She froze, looked at the paper, then back at me. "We'll see about that," she hissed. "I'm counting on it," I said, and turned back toward the cabin. Behind me, I heard her bark at the others to leave the boxes. They'd started stacking them by the walkway, props for an eviction they'd never finish. The sight was surreal, cardboard towers against mountains older than every law she could quote. That evening, Henry hobbled over with his thermos. "Heard you gave him hell," he said. "Just a gentle reminder of property rights." He chuckled, coughed. "Wish my wife was alive to see this. She hated that woman." I smiled. "We're just getting started, Henry." As the sun dipped, my phone buzzed. Clara again. "We got the county response. They're reviewing the annexation for irregularities. That's code for investigation." The sound of crickets filled the valley. For the first time in weeks, I felt stillness. But calm before storm, it always goes that way. Because the next morning, a sheriff's cruiser pulled up behind 3 HOA SUVs. Rhonda had called in backup. The sheriff stepped out slow, hand resting on his belt, the gravel crunching under his boots. "Morning, Mr. Harlan," he said, eyes moving from me to Rhonda. "We got a call about a civil disturbance." I kept my hands visible. "No disturbance here, officer, just a property line being tested." Rhonda's scarf whipped in the mountain wind. "He's obstructing an authorized compliance action," she snapped. The sheriff glanced at her clipboard. "Ma'am, this annexation filing doesn't carry a county seal." He held it up to the light, then back to me. "You got your deed handy?" I passed him the original copy. He studied it, nodded once, and handed it back. "Looks clear to me. County recording trumps HOA paperwork every day of the week." Rhonda's face reddened. "You're making a mistake." He tilted his hat. "Ma'am, mistakes come with badges too. Don't make me write you up for trespass." He gestured toward her SUVs. "Move them off his property." They left, silent except for the chirp of their radios. As the last SUV disappeared down the gravel, the sheriff turned back to me. "You handled that calm. Most folks don't." "Just doing what my dad taught me," I said. "Measure twice before you swing." He smirked, tipped his hat, and drove off. The moment the dust settled, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for weeks. That night, I called Clara and Vince on speaker. "It's official. The county's backing us," Clara said. "They'll send a compliance inspector Monday to verify annexation boundaries." Knowledge nugget number 3. A county inspector's verification report supersedes HOA claims when property jurisdiction overlaps unrecorded areas. If the map's wrong, enforcement collapses, retroactively. We agreed to stay quiet till the inspection. I needed them to overcommit again. People like Rhonda always do. Meanwhile, the harassment mutated into subtle war. HOA newsletters calling me a legal obstructionist. Anonymous notes left in my mailbox saying, "Sell before it gets worse." I didn't rise to it. Every piece of paper went into the evidence log binder, now over 150 pages. But beneath the grit, something personal started cracking. Late one night, I caught myself staring at Dad's unfinished porch beam. The nails were rusted, his old hammer still hanging from a hook. He used to say, "Build it solid enough that no storm can take it." Maybe he meant more than lumber. The next day, I met Vince at a small cafe in Gunnison. He was flipping through public bank records. "Guess who's behind their enforcement budget?" he said. "Don't tell me. Valley Development Partners. Same developer who built phases 1 through 3. They've been bankrolling the HOA to pressure hole. Dudes like you to sell cheap." I leaned back, heartbeat steady but sharp. "So it's not about fences or paint, it's about land." "Bingo," he said. "They want the river frontage for the resort expansion. Your parcel's the missing tooth." The puzzle finally clicked. Rhonda wasn't just power-hungry. She was paid. The HOA was the developer's puppet arm, and if the county found their annexation invalid, the developer's deal collapsed. That knowledge burned steady in my gut. Still, I couldn't show it yet. I needed a way to prove the funding link legally. Emails, transfers, something irrefutable. Clara had an idea. "We file a discovery request through the county ethics board. They'll have to cough up financial disclosures." We did. Within 72 hours, the HOA's attorney sent a furious cease and desist letter claiming defamation. Clara laughed. "That's the sound of a nerve being hit." Meanwhile, the community started whispering. Neighbors stopped avoiding eye contact at the mailbox. Old Henry told me, "They're talking about what you did with the sheriff. Folks think maybe we don't have to be scared anymore." That mattered more than any fine reversed or title cleared. For the first time, I saw what this fight could change. Late that evening, as I sorted receipts under the kitchen lamp, I recorded a short line on my phone for the next upload. How far should an HOA control your porch, lawn, or even your freedom to sit on it? Where's the line for you? Tell me below, or at least like the video so others see what happens when we push back. The next morning, the inspector arrived. County badge, clipboard, laser rangefinder. Rhonda was already there, pacing like a cat in wet grass. He started measuring 1, 2, 3 property pins. Then he frowned. "Your annexation map's 40 feet off, Mrs. Pyle. These pins don't match recorded coordinates." "That can't be," she stammered. "It can," he said, tapping his GPS screen. "And it is. You're trespassing on private land. This entire section's excluded from your jurisdiction." Her phone buzzed. I could see her hands shaking as she read the message, probably her developer contact realizing the deal was unraveling. The inspector looked at me. "Mr. Harlan, you'll get a certified report within 5 business days. You're clear." As they left, Vince leaned close. "You realize what this means? Their annexation's void. Every citation, every fine, they're illegal." I smiled, slow. "Yeah, and I haven't even played my full card yet." Because tucked away in my drawer was a sealed envelope, a notarized assignment I'd purchased quietly a week before. Inside it was the HOA's debt note from their insurance carrier, bought through a Shell LLC for less than a used pickup. That, I thought, would be my ace when the time came. I kept that envelope locked inside the old gun safe behind my father's fishing rods. It wasn't a weapon. It was leverage. A quiet piece of paper that said I now own the HOA's outstanding liability insurance note for $148,000. If they defaulted, I could enforce the policy or call for audit. Either way, I'd have legal standing to open their books. That week, the valley buzzed like a hive kicked twice. Rhonda and her board called an emergency community integrity meeting, supposedly to address misinformation. I knew it was their attempt at damage control. I showed up anyway, wearing the same flannel my dad used to fish in. The rec hall was packed. 50 neighbors, folding chairs, stale donuts, tension so thick you could smell burnt coffee and fear. Rhonda opened the meeting like a preacher who'd lost her gospel. "There's been confusion," she said. "Certain individuals are spreading false claims about our jurisdiction." I raised my hand. "Would those claims include the county inspector's certified report from Monday?" The room murmured. Rhonda glared. "You have no right to speak out of turn." "Actually," I said, stepping forward, "Colorado Revised Statute 38 to 33.3 to 308 guarantees every member or affected resident the right to address an HOA board in open session." She blinked. "You're not a member." "Exactly," I said, pulling a folded letter from my jacket, "and this is why your jurisdiction ends at the stream." I laid down the inspector's signed map. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rhonda's lawyer tried to intervene, waving his hand. "This is an internal matter." "No," I said, cutting him off. "This is a public matter involving recorded deeds and state law. And since you've been issuing fines based on a forged annexation, I've filed a formal complaint with the county fraud unit." The room went silent except for the hum of the exit sign. Rhonda's hands trembled slightly, but she managed to smirk. "You think you've won something here, Mr. Harlan? We'll see whose paperwork holds up in the end." "That's exactly what we'll see," I said, calm as stone. "But you might want to check your insurer's position first." She frowned, confused. I didn't elaborate. That was the beauty of reversal number 1. They wouldn't know they'd already lost until I chose to show them. Later that night, Clara called. "You just made the local paper," she said. "Front page, HOA boundaries invalid, county confirms error." I laughed. Finally, some free publicity. But I also knew what came next. Retaliation. Bullies don't retreat. They regroup. Within days, my mailbox filled again. Code citations, demands for back dues, pending verification, even a threat of lien for unpaid assessments on community maintenance. I stapled each one to a corkboard in the kitchen. Evidence, I told myself aloud like an oath. One evening, I caught Rhonda's SUV idling at the edge of my driveway. Headlights off. Just watching. I stood on the porch with a flashlight aimed at the badge on her door. Valley HOA Enforcement. She peeled away without a word. My pulse stayed steady, but for the first time, I locked the cabin door behind me. I poured coffee and sat at Dad's desk, thinking of the promise I'd made to him, that this land would stay ours, no matter what. My reflection in the window looked older than I felt. Maybe that's what fighting institutions does. It carves you down to your willpower. A few days later, Henry dropped by with his thermos again. "You stirred up a hornet's nest, Nate," he said. "But folks are waking up. They're tired of the fines, tired of pretending they like it." "That's the plan," I said. "They have power only if we act like they do." He nodded, wheezing a little. "You know, my granddaughter asked me yesterday if grown-ups ever fix broken systems. I told her maybe." I smiled. "Tell her we're working on it." That night, I drafted a letter to the state HOA Ombudsman's office, a detailed complaint citing violations of CRS 3833.3, 209.4, failure to provide financial transparency, and 209.5, selective enforcement. It took 3 hours, 3 cups of coffee, and a quiet resolve not to let anger steer me. Knowledge. Nugget number 4. Colorado law requires HOAs to provide annual financial reports to members upon written request. Failure to comply can trigger state audit and civil penalties. Once it was filed, I knew the next board meeting would be their breaking point. They'd try to flip the narrative, paint me as hostile, unstable, maybe even dangerous. I was ready. Before the meeting, I slipped the sealed insurance assignment envelope into my briefcase. The paper crinkled like dry leaves. The plan was simple. Let them attack me publicly, then reveal the one document that misuse aid their entire authority subject to my consent. And because I like symmetry, I decided the reveal would happen in the same rec hall where they first tried to humiliate me. The same flickering exit sign, the same crooked flag in the corner. Halfway through the agenda, Rhonda called my name. "Mr. Harlan, you've been repeatedly disruptive to community peace," she began, her voice echoing through the mic. "The board is considering civil action." I stood, adjusted my jacket, and stepped to the podium. The wooden floor creaked under my boots. "Funny," I said, "because I've been considering the same thing." I placed the envelope on the table between us. "Inside this," I said, "is the debt note your HOA owes to its insurer, purchased legally through assignment under UCC Article 9. That means, as of 2 weeks ago, I'm your creditor." Gasps. Phones raised. Someone whispered, "Is that even possible?" "Oh, it's possible," I said. "And it means your policy, your audits, and your compliance certifications now answer to me until it's paid in full." The room erupted. Shouts, questions, even applause from the back. Rhonda's face went white. "I told you," I said quietly, leaning toward her mic. "Measure twice before you swing." That was the night the valley started to change. Rhonda didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. The only sound in the hall was the hum of the ceiling fans and the rustle of cell phones capturing everything. Then she tried to laugh, but it came out thin, brittle. "You're bluffing," she said. "That document can't mean what you think it does." I met her stare. "It's filed, stamped, and notarized under the Secretary of State's UCC division. File number 2024-10731C. Anyone here can verify it in 10 minutes. I turned slightly to the crowd. "You all deserve to know who really controls your money." Her lawyer snatched the envelope, scanned the first page, and froze. The seal, the assignment clause, my LLC's signature, it was all there. His mouth opened and closed once, then he leaned to her and muttered something I couldn't catch. Her shoulders sagged. When I left that night, the mountain air felt sharper, freer. The porch light of the rec hall flickered as I crossed the gravel lot. Henry was waiting near his truck, leaning on his cane. "You really did it," he said. "You hit them where it hurts." "Not yet," I said. "They'll try to paint me as a predator now. Wait for it." He chuckled softly. "Then you better have another nail ready for that coffin." The next few weeks turned into a siege. Rhonda's board unleashed a wave of PR spin, glossy flyers claiming I was seeking to bankrupt the community, anonymous emails suggesting I was under investigation. I wasn't. Even a fake post from a burner account alleging I'd tampered with official records. I kept calm, but the weight crept in. Late nights sorting through folders, cross-checking timestamps. The smell of old paper and toner hung in my cabin like another presence. One morning, I caught myself shaking when I poured coffee, realized I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in days. Then came the night they crossed the line. At 2:14 a.m., headlights swept across my windows. A truck idled near the bridge. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out. Someone was nailing a laminated "property seized for HOA debt" sign to my fence post. I shouted, and they bolted. 2 figures. One of them clearly Rhonda's enforcer, the tall one with the HOA windbreaker. The sign clattered to the ground as their taillights vanished. That's when fear finally hit. Not for myself, but for what could happen if they kept escalating. I called the sheriff, filed a report, took photos with timestamps. The deputy, a younger guy named Daniels, Promi, said to patrol the road for a week. The next morning, I sat at Dad's desk again, staring at the sign. It reeked of cheap laminate and arrogance. I tossed it into the wood stove, watched the plastic curl and blacken, the words "seized property" melting into nothing. That night, I recorded another short segment for the upload queue. Fines for paint, fences, or mailboxes might sound trivial until someone uses them to bully a family out of their home. Tell me below, how much should an HOA be allowed to fine before it becomes extortion? $250, $500, $1,000. Where's your line? I let that question hang, voice steady but low. The video would go out next week, but I already knew it would light up the comments. Meanwhile, Clara called with an update. The state ombudsman's office responded. They're launching an inquiry into the HOA's finances, especially insurance disbursements. Perfect, I said. That's where the trail leads. But then her tone changed. Be careful, Nate. Rhonda's lawyer filed a temporary injunction claim, accusing you of interfering with contractual obligations. I laughed softly. They're panicking. They can't win that. I'm a lawful assignee. Still, a flicker of worry stayed. Legal fights eat time and money, and both were running thin. I spent 2 days tightening the case files, dates, emails, inspection reports, all color-coded in binders. I photographed each page for redundancy, backed everything up to 2 encrypted drives. By the 3rd night, exhaustion settled in like humidity. I sat on the porch, watching the creek flash silver under moonlight. A coyote called somewhere up the ridge. For the first time, I wondered what Dad would have said about all this. Maybe he'd tell me to remember why I was fighting, not for revenge, but so people like Henry wouldn't spend their retirements being fined for mailbox colors. That thought steadied me. The next morning brought a new letter. Notice of special meeting. Subject, financial stabilization vote. In small print at the bottom, I saw the hook. Failure to pass may result in transfer of fiduciary management to external party. They were trying to restructure around me, to strip my leverage by shifting the HOA's financial authority. That was their final card, and I knew it. So I called Clara. We let them vote, I said. We let them think they're cutting me out. What's the play? She asked. Public exposure, I said. We'll record the meeting with county oversight. It's time for everyone to see what they've been hiding. She hesitated. That's bold. Necessary, I said. If they want a show, let's make it one they can't spin. I spent the next 48 hours preparing. Copies of every violation notice, photos of forged documents, the county inspector's report, and my insurance note assignment, each laminated, numbered, and sealed in a single binder labeled Public Record, Valley HOA Proceedings. As I zipped it shut, the sound of the binder rings clacking felt like a gun being holstered. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. It was justice in 3 inches of vinyl. The morning of the vote, the sky hung low and gray, clouds snagging on the ridgeline like wool. I loaded the binder into my truck bed, strapped it beside the tripod, and headed toward the rec hall. The road was slick from last night's rain, mud streaked with tire ruts, like scars that refused to heal. By the time I arrived, cars already lined the gravel lot. The HOA had hired a security guard, private badge, mirrored sunglasses, one hand resting near his belt radio. Name? He asked. Nate Harlan, I said. Member of the public, creditor of record. He blinked, uncertain what to do with that. Finally stepped aside. Proceed. Inside, the room buzzed with forced politeness. Rhonda stood at tea. He podium again, scarf replaced by a blazer too stiff for mountain air. This meeting will determine the fiscal future of our community, she said. We face potential insolvency due to ongoing litigation. I found a seat near the front, camera running. Clara sat 2 rows behind, quiet and composed, a folder on her lap. Vince leaned against the wall near the outlets, pretending to check his phone but really timing everything. Rhonda began her speech about financial stability, tossing around phrases like fiduciary reallocation and emergency authorization. The board nodded like metronomes. When she opened the floor for comment, I stood. Mr. Harlan, again, she sighed. We've heard enough from you. Not yet, you haven't, I said. Before anyone votes to hand control of this HOA's finances to an outside entity, I'd like to introduce Exhibit 1. I carried the binder to the front table, flipped it open, and laid down the county inspection report, the forged annexation, and finally the insurance assignment. Each of these documents, I said, was obtained legally and verified. Together they prove that this board has exceeded its authority, misrepresented its jurisdiction, and concealed financial relationships with a private developer. I am by law the controlling creditor of your liability policy. Any transfer without my authorization constitutes breach of contract. The room went dead still. Then the door opened behind us, and in stepped County Compliance Officer Lena Ortiz. Small woman, calm eyes, badge clipped to her vest. Per county directive, she said, this meeting will be observed for transparency due to active fraud review. Visual beat number 1. Her clipboard glinting under the fluorescent light, the seal of the county stamped in red. Rhonda stammered. We were not informed. You are now, Ortiz said, taking a seat near the aisle. The next 20 minutes were chaos disguised as procedure. Board members whispered, deferred, then started to crumble under the weight of facts. When Ortiz requested copies of the annexation map, the HOA's attorney refused. Attorney-client privilege, he said. She raised an eyebrow. Not in a public meeting. Produce it. He hesitated too long. She wrote something in her notebook. By the time voting started, the crowd had shifted. Neighbors who'd been silent for years began muttering, then speaking openly. Henry, bless him, stood up with his cane. I was fined $300 for wind chimes, he said. $300 for a sound my wife loved. I vote no. The hall erupted in murmured support. One after another, people echoed him. Rhonda's control evaporated like steam. When the count closed, Ortiz read it aloud. Motion fails. 32 opposed, 6 in favor. Rhonda's face collapsed. She grabbed the mic. You're all being manipulated by misinformation. I stepped forward slowly, voice calm. Or maybe we're finally informed. Her lawyer began packing up papers. The board members wouldn't meet her eyes. I watched her hands shake as she tried to gather control of the meeting, but no one was listening anymore. Afterward, Ortiz approached me outside. Rain had started again, soft at first, then steady. You did this clean, she said. Didn't break anything that can't be fixed. Still feels like a mess, I admitted. Most reform starts that way. She looked toward the valley. You've built a record strong enough for state review. Expect subpoenas within a week. Her professionalism carried a quiet power, the neutral authority that turned my private war into public accountability. As she drove off, Vince clapped me on the back. You realize what just happened? You triggered a domino chain, developer funding, insurance oversight, everything. It's all going to unravel it. Well, that was when I finally exhaled. Not victory, just relief shaped like breath. That night I uploaded another short clip. Nothing fancy, just me sitting on the porch while rain hit the railing. Should board meetings be recorded for accountability, or does that violate privacy? Tell me what you think in the comments, because what I saw today proves one thing: sunlight changes behavior. The camera caught lightning flashing behind me, the mountains glowing white for half a heartbeat. It wasn't planned, but it felt symbolic. Inside I dried the binder's edges, then slid a new tab at the back. Post-vote proceedings. It was the quiet act of a man who knew the fight wasn't over, but that the tide had turned. At midnight, my phone buzzed, a text from Clara. They're calling an emergency resignation session. We did it. I smiled at the message, then stared out at the rain, thinking of Dad's half-built porch, the one I'd promised to finish. Maybe after this, I finally would. By the next sunrise, word had spread faster than wildfire in Dry Brush. The local paper ran a follow-up headline: 3 HOA board members resign amid financial audit. My phone buzzed non-stop. Neighbors, reporters, even a state housing committee aide asking for a statement. I gave none. I wanted the facts to speak before the noise drowned them. Still, the attention came with risk. Rhonda hadn't disappeared. She'd gone underground. A new email arrived that morning from her personal account. You've destroyed years of community progress. We'll rebuild without you. I forwarded it to Clara with one line: add to harassment file. Later that day, Ortiz called. The county's referring everything to the state attorney general's office. Fraud, forgery, unauthorized liens. We'll need you as a witness. Gladly, I said. She paused. You okay, Mr. Harlan? Most people don't hold up this long. I wasn't fighting alone, I told her. I had good neighbors. That night, we held a spontaneous gathering by the bridge. Henry, a handful of others, a lantern between us. No speeches, no toasts, just quiet conversation and the sound of water moving fast below. You gave us our valley back, Henry said, voice rough. Don't think we don't know it. Keep it, I said. I'm not done with them yet. Because the final reversal, the reform deal, was forming in my head. I didn't want their board gone. I wanted it restructured, transparent, fair. The valley needed rules, just not rulers. 3 days later, the HOA's insurer called my LLC office line, a polite man with a clipped tone. Mr. Harlan, as the assigned creditor of record, you're entitled to specify resolution terms for reinstatement of the HOA's coverage. How would you like to proceed? I almost smiled. Condition renewal on governance reform. He hesitated. Could you clarify? Term limits, public financial reports, independent ethics review, fee rollback of at least 15% and open voting. No reform, no renewal. He cleared his throat. We'll draft a conditional policy endorsement. And just like that, leverage turned into structure. The following week, we convened under the same rec hall roof. New faces at the front table, temporary community representatives chosen by consensus. I sat near the back, letting them lead. Ortiz was there too, clipboard balanced on her knee. The interim chair, a soft-spoken teacher named Elena Cruz, addressed the room. We've reviewed Mr. Harlan's proposed conditions and find them fair. The insurance carrier supports this reform as prerequisite for continued coverage. We vote to adopt. The vote was unanimous. For the first time, there was applause that didn't sound forced. Visual beat number 2, the stamped deed and new charter laid side by side under the hall's flickering lights, ink still wet, history folding into present. I didn't speak until the end, when Elena invited me to the mic. This isn't about me winning, I said. It's about us not losing the right to breathe free on land we maintain, pay for, and love. If you remember anything from this fight, let it be this. Transparency isn't rebellion. It's maintenance. That line stuck. The local paper printed it the next morning, front page above a photo of me shaking Ortiz's hand. But for every victory, there's paperwork. The state audit dragged on for months. Rhonda eventually faced 3 misdemeanor charges: falsifying documents, harassment, and misuse of authority. She pled no contest, got probation, and vanished from the valley. The developer canceled their expansion project 2 weeks later. The domino collapse was complete, clean, lawful, final. Late that night, as rain tapped against the porch roof, I recorded another message for the channel. If an HOA officer trespasses, lies, or manipulates power, what should the penalty be? Community service? Fines? Disqualification for life? Drop your thoughts below. We're building precedent one case at a time. The camera caught me closing the binder for good, the metal latch snapping shut like punctuation. Inside, a quiet relief settled. Clara texted, "AG's office confirmed compliance. You're officially in the clear." I poured 2 fingers of whiskey, stared out into the valley mist, and finally, let the exhaustion catch up. The valley changed slowly, like thaw after a long winter. A month after the reforms took effect, the HOA's new charter went online. Public budgets, meeting live streams, even a simple contact form that actually worked. People started smiling at one another again at the mailbox. Kids played ball near the creek without anyone measuring the decibel level. I didn't attend every meeting, but when I did, it was as a neighbor, not a fighter. Clara went back to her city practice, though she still texted updates. Audit closed, clean. Insurance renewed under new board. Vince moved on to another case, still calling now and then to brag about the time we outpapered the paper pushers. Henry, stubborn as ever, built a new bench near the bridge and carved a line into it. Measure twice before you swing. One evening, Elena stopped by carrying a folder. "We're naming the new scholarship fund after your father," she said. "It'll go to local kids studying land management or civil engineering." I had to step away for a second, let the air steady in my lungs. "He'd like that," I said finally. "He built things that lasted." She smiled. "So did you." Before the season turned, the local paper ran one final headline. Valley HOA adopts transparency charter. First in county history. Below it, a photo of the new board signing the reform agreement, my cabin visible in the background. Visual beat number 3. A wide shot of the valley under morning light, the bridge clean and dry, the reflection of that headline taped to my porch window. I sat there that night with a mug of coffee, recorded my last segment for this story. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend who's in their own fight right now. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And as responsible citizens, share this so others learn, because fairness doesn't spread by accident, it spreads by witness. I paused, looked past the camera at the valley my dad loved, and added, "No one owns peace here, we just maintain it together." The upload went live at dawn. By noon, the comments section had turned into a quiet flood of stories. People in Florida, Arizona, Oregon, all saying the same thing. Finally, someone picked back the right way. As I closed the laptop, the sun hit the ridge just right, lighting up every wet pine and window in gold. The porch beam creaked under my hand, solid and unfinished no more. I'd replaced the last board that morning. I hung Dad's old hammer on the hook, right where it belonged. And as the light faded across the water, I said the only line that fit the silence. "Next case waits downstream."